This is the
Spartan Podcast,
where we illuminate the world of parenting children with autism. I'm CJ, a proud dad to a wonderful 6-year-old with autism. Through my journey, I've discovered the challenges, triumphs, and unique experiences that come with raising a child on the spectrum. Inspired by those experiences, I created this space where parents like you can find understanding, share stories, and learn from each other. Join me as we explore insights, strategies, and support, all while celebrating the brighter spectrum of our children's lives. Now, let's dive in and cast light on this path together. Welcome back, and I'm so glad everybody is returning. Sitting down with me today is a woman of 3 children on the spectrum. Joanne, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so happy to have you on the show.
You're very welcome.
So, Joanne, tell me a little bit about your kids. Like, are they older? Are they younger? We didn't really go too much into your life before getting on the microphones here. So, what's your story?
Okay, well, I adopted 3 special needs kids since birth. My oldest one is autistic, as along with ID, and I adopted him at birth. He was in a special preschool in New York, which was called Child Study Center. I then adopted his baby brother, who also was on the spectrum. And then 2 months after that, I got my other son, who's also on the spectrum. Very, very intelligent. He actually has what's called Asperger's syndrome, which is part of the autism spectrum.
Yeah, I actually just had a conversation with somebody last night, and they were telling me that because they're also have Asperger's, that a lot of people come down on him, saying that the use of the term Asperger's is considered offensive now because everything is under the umbrella
Seriously,
of
I
the
didn't even know that.
spectrum. I didn't know that either. I thought it was a little wild because it's like, those designations kind of, with people who are in the know, like if you say Asperger's, all right, I know that means that they have a habit of saying things that aren't necessarily socially acceptable, and they don't really realize it until they see everybody else's reactions, along with a couple of other things,
Right.
but yeah, I guess people don't really like using the terms anymore.
Right.
It's very strange. But just for my listeners here, can you explain to us what ID is?
Intellectual disabilities.
Right.
What that is, they renamed mentally retarded into a nicer word, which is intellectual disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
My son is 18, but he's on the level, I think, of 11.
Gotcha.
So we're still going through, the process of, what is okay, what's not okay.
Yeah, they diagnosed my son with the same. He is on the autism spectrum with an intellectual disability.
Yeah.
Although, I'm not really sure if that diagnosis is entirely accurate, because like you said, it's like how they designate mental retardation now.
Mhm.
And my son doesn't exactly exhibit any of the qualities that you would see in a child with the ID. And he acts very much so like a very standard 7-year-old. He just has like verbal issues and like strange social cues,
Yeah.
The typical autism things. So I'm kind of thinking that like maybe the doctors out here are applying that diagnosis as sort of a way to kind of help us parents out when it comes to getting services
Yes,
that we need.
definitely.
Yeah, because they can't tell us that.
In New York, when Christian was 3 years old, everybody in New York was getting the diagnosis of PDD-NOS.
Okay. Do you know what those are?
Yes, I do. Pervasive developmental delays, none otherwise specified.
Okay.
So if your child got diagnosed with PDD-NOS, they automatically put him into an autistic classroom. Because when you adopt a child out of the system, by age 3, they're in early intervention programs.
Right.
They have to go to a special preschool. So that's what happened. My son didn't walk until he was 3. I put him in. He didn't know how to act around other children his age. So that's why I took him to this one school, which unfortunately didn't work out. So we changed it off, and he did go to the Child Study Center, and they did remarkable stuff with him. And now, living in PA, he goes to Colonial Academy, which is in Wind Gap, and they're
Mhm.
doing really, really good with him.
Okay. Is that sort of like the Colonial Intervention Unit, or is that a separate?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. IU
Right.
20 in Wind Gap.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. My son is also through the IU-20. Not in Wind Gap. I'm a little further south of that. But yeah, it's amazing though, like how they kind of like they apply these sort of diagnoses, and maybe it's not entirely there. Maybe they're covering their butts, like in case they miss
Yeah,
something. I do think though that it was like, hey, I'm going to give him this diagnosis. He doesn't have it, but I want you to have access to services.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
when we took Christian to New York, we wanted to get him into this special school, which was a day treatment center. And they tested him. And the guy sat down and said, well, he's got to have an IQ less than 65 for him to get in.
Hmm.
So, yeah, he had put it at 60, my son's IQ. So, I was like, okay, now tell me about this school that I'm sending him to. And the only drawback was that they didn't focus on academics. They
Right.
focused more on behavioral.
Development. Right. Right. I mean, it sort of makes sense, right? Because like a lot of these kids, especially at that age, it's really hard to tell if they're gonna be able to grow up and be independent and self-sufficient, or maybe even in like a situation where they have like their own place of residence with like an aide that comes by.
Hmm.
There's no way to really be like, this kid is going to end up like this, so they have to like really just cover all the bases from the get-go and then kind of see what happens as they get older, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah. So hey, I mean, it's nice that they do that, because they could be taking all these other steps and really just sucking money out of your insurance.
Exactly. Exactly. Um,
But
it's
yeah, so that's your first son, right? So you went through this
yes.
adoption process, which I can only imagine. I know adopting neurotypical children is hoops of fire and is insanely expensive.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty it's a whirlwind,
mhm.
because as soon as you get the baby, by the time they're maybe close to a year, they start the early intervention programs, where you have a whole bunch of therapists in your house working. So all three of my kids had, um, oh my God, they had physical therapy, they had cognitive therapy, they had a whole bunch of a wide variety of stuff. They had ABA therapy.
Oh, can we talk about that for a minute? I haven't had anybody really discuss ABA on here, and I know it's a super controversial therapy. Some people are like, it's child abuse, and other people are like, this is amazing, we love it. So, like, can you kind of go over like what
Yeah,
that
sure.
process was like?
Yeah. So, Christian actually got 5 days of ABA at the tune of 60 minutes a day. Now, the problem with that is he had three different teachers, which made it a little crazy, because they
Hmm.
all had different personalities. And the one thing I didn't agree with is like they would only give him like 30 seconds to engage. Like,
Hmm.
okay, Christian, let's build a puzzle. Oh, this is not working. Okay, let's do this. Let's do that. Let's do the other thing. So to me, they like really confuse the kid, because children with autism don't adapt to change.
Right. So they were like rapid firing stuff at him rather than giving him that moment to like register what was going on and
Yeah,
then really kind
exactly.
of like decide how he was going to respond.
Yeah. And there was one instance where he was having a tantrum, and the ABA therapist was there. So usually when he had a tantrum, I would put him in a big, big playpen for him to calm down and just deregulate and just, feel better, right? And this
Right, right.
ABA therapist decided I'm going to go in the playpen with him.
What?
Yeah. And I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. Oh, I'm a
Well,
professional. I know what I'm doing. Well, make a long story short, he attacked her because she got into his space.
that seems about right. When they're having those meltdowns and they lose that emotional
Yeah.
control, you can't
Yeah.
always guarantee that they won't react violently towards further stimulus. It's sort of like I've never really heard anybody say it directly. So, like, this is my unscientific opinion of the matter, but it's
Mhm.
um, like when they're in that emotional meltdown, they've lost control of their emotions. Somebody comes in and they attack them. It's like it triggered their fight or flight, and they got nowhere
Yep,
to run.
exactly. The way it was explained to us is that when you have an autistic, and it's really funny because I used to work with autistic children for 25 years. I used to work on the school buses, but I mainly dealt with autistic children. And it's very hard to deal with autistic children on a moving vehicle. That,
Hmm.
God forbid, they do go off. You're in trouble. So basically, one thing I have learned with autism children is if you could make them look straight into your face and make eye contact, that's like half the battle. And
That's
I,
like finding the holy grail, though. When they're really upset, like getting them to make eye contact
yeah,
with you. I
yeah,
mean, they don't
and
make eye contact on their best days half the time.
yeah, and then we had a lot of therapists in the house. We still, we had the ABA. We also had wraparound plus down here where I had one. We had New York Foundling in New York, and they came in, and my son was having a complete meltdown.
Mm.
I mean, like throwing things. He was hitting me, and they literally got up and left. And I called them up and I said, "What do I need you for if you're going to sit there and leave?" And they're like, "Well, we have to protect the workers." And I'm like, well, "What about me?" You know.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah, it was very. And then they used to tell Chris. Well, they used to tell me anyway. Put these signs on the wall to de-escalate him. Put pictures up. Put words up. Let him look at the words in between a tantrum. And I said, "Are you serious?" I said, "When a child is in it, because my child especially used to go from 0 to 60 in about uh, 20 seconds."
If you were lucky, right?
Yeah, I was lucky. And then you got to sit there and you got to try to calm them down.
Right.
And a lot of times my son had to be hospitalized. He was hospitalized the first time at age 5
Hmm.
because he was way, way erratic. He's lived in several group homes. And then finally, now he's starting to level out. I'm not going to say he doesn't get violent anymore because he does, but it's a little bit more manageable.
How old is he now?
Going to be 18.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, you're looking at almost 20 years of experience with these kids
Yeah,
directly. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And
Would you
well,
say that like in your opinion, was the ABA therapy worth it? Would you recommend it to other parents, or were you like, last ditch effort sort of thing?
yeah, last ditch effort.
Okay.
I got to be honest. And you got to be mindful of ABA therapy because they will try to hang you on anything. I mean, I had therapists put a lot of false accusations against me. And
Really?
oh yeah, I really did.
Hmm.
And I was devastated because I'm like, here it is. I'm adopting my children, and you're going to call up people, the adoption agency, say all these bad things about me. It could have really sabotaged my adoption.
Wow. So it was like, what
So
were they like accusing you of, like child abuse and things like
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Jeez.
They said I had a 100-pound dog running around my house, but meanwhile, my dog was only 3 pounds.
Well,
So
I mean, even if you had 100-pound dog running around your house, I have an 80-pound husky running around here. He loves my kid,
yeah,
loves him. That dog would never do anything to that
yeah,
child. That
exactly.
does that doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, well, they have a
You
big
know,
dog. Okay,
yeah,
so is the dog violent? Like, who cares? Like,
yeah. So basically, what I did, because when I adopted my children, I had 3 children under the age of 2. Actually, a year and a half. Because Christian came at 1 year old. His brother came 3 months later at 3 months old. And then about 6 months later, I got my other baby. And they all had early intervention in my house.
Hmm.
Yeah. So my house was like really like, and they come in like ABA will tell you, you got to go out and buy us a table and chair set. We need a rug. Wait, table and chair set, rug. Some musical instruments. I mean, they give you like a list of what you need. And to tell you the truth, like 9 times out of 10, like Christian especially, was not able to sit there for like an hour engaging.
Yeah, yeah, it seems like a lot. Like, I mean, I think with my son, if you try to intentionally get him to engage in something, you've got 5 to 10 minutes of his attention,
Yep.
like tops, and he's got to go stim somewhere, or jump on the trampoline or something. He'll come back, but like he
Yeah,
can't,
exactly.
he can't make it through the whole thing, and that seems crazy. They expected, this a child with autism to sit there for an hour.
Like I had this one therapist that really didn't want to play too much, right? And she forced him to play with a little water toy. And I was like, please don't do that, because I said he's not going to take well to that neither. And he actually bit her and she quit on the spot. So yeah, it was like,
And they were worried about the dog.
yeah. I was like, you know, but his middle brother, my other son,
Yeah.
he's what's called on the spectrum totally. Meaning, when he was little, he used to tiptoe walk, and that's one of the
Mm.
big red flags.
Right, right.
He
Yeah, because they
wasn't,
have like that
yeah,
sensory issues with the bottoms of their feet. Yeah.
yeah, he wasn't able to engage with other people
Hmm.
because we had what's called the Jewish Board of Family and Services, and they took him out to eat, and the therapist said, "Well, I'm gonna put him opposite another girl that goes to his school," and he couldn't talk at all. And like the therapist was saying, can you please so tell her what your favorite subject is, or ask her what her favorite subject is. And he was not able to do it. And she called me and she's like, he doesn't engage with people too well. I said, I know.
Well, I mean, even like my son is relatively good at engagement considering being on the spectrum. And if you ask him his favorite anything, he doesn't really have a response for you. He'll look at you like, I don't know what you mean, you know?
Yeah, yeah. you know um I love I love working with my children because I used to help them out myself. And I remember my other little boy, I was in a licensing class for ACS, right? And
Okay.
what happened was is that I was telling him a story that my son could do a 40-piece puzzle. No, I'm sorry, a 60-piece puzzle in around 5 minutes. So the facilitator told me, he's like, well, don't be so happy about that, because that means there's something wrong. And I'm like, well, what? To me, he was just smart, right? So what happened
Right.
was we had to go down to the turning 3 meeting to put him into the preschool, right? And we're sitting there and everything's cool. And the director of the Child Study Center, which is in Staten Island, was there. And what happened was my son spotted a minuscule, and I mean minuscule, piece of a rubber band. And he took and he put it up to his eye and he was like playing with it. And right there and then the coordinator said, okay, he's in. I said, okay. And yeah, because like my son, like if we would go to a party, and even to this day, he always stays right by my side.
Okay.
Yeah, like he won't leave my side for nothing. And I'll be like, okay. I said, why don't you go play with the other little kids? And one thing about Asperger's is you don't have any socialization skills.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what his biggest problem is. He's a genius. But I mean, like he's up for scholarships, but he's tagged as on the autism spectrum because of that.
Right, right. Hmm. So, um, is it because he didn't know how to socialize, or he just
No, he
really
doesn't know
didn't
how to
want to?
socialize too well.
Okay.
Like still to this day, like he follows me a lot, and like I remember going to the YMCA, and I put him in a class to see how he would do, and he did mediocre. He did pretty good, and I picked him up, and we're going out into the lobby, and I saw this really really huge snake because they were having like this thing like a demonstration, and my other two boys went with their father over to the snake to pet it, and
Oh, was it like a woman doing the demonstration?
yes.
Oh, that's Christina's reptile sanctuary.
So what happened was, it was like, here I am, and I'm telling this lady, I said, "Is that a snake?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay." So my husband tells me, and Jose, "Come on, let's go pet the snake." And I'm like, "I can't. I'm afraid of it." And my son goes to meet his father. He goes, "Well, mommy's afraid that I'm afraid."
It's actually funny that you bring that up. I'm actually talking to her right now. I'm trying to convince her to come onto the show. I have this theory that reptiles are actually really good pets for kids with autism for various
You
reasons.
really?
Yeah, and I'm trying to convince her to come on the show to talk to me about it. It's crazy that you bumped into her. Her sanctuary is phenomenal. I've gotten a couple of mine from her too. Um, so he was all about touching the snake until you said you were afraid, and he's like, "Oh, my
Yep,
safe person's afraid, so."
exactly.
If the safe person's afraid, then I'm not doing it either.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I guess that
Exactly.
makes sense, right? That makes sense. So, um, hmm. What about the other two kids? You see, we talked a whole lot about Christian.
Okay,
What?
so my middle son is right now living in the home of Easton, boys' home of Easton, because he actually had volatile issues.
Oh,
So what they're doing, he's in a kind of a program where he did settle out a little bit. I mean, he's okay now. So what happened is now he's going into what's called independent living.
right.
So they're going to try to teach him to live by himself.
So with that, is that like, well, he's by himself, but like, would they have like an aide coming in to check on him and help him out a little bit, or is it
Um,
100% on his own?
no, there's somebody that comes in. Like they'll come in for his medication. They'll come in to make sure he knows how to cook.
Okay.
They want to teach him independence, and because I believe that's what they need. Because
Okay.
like like I worry what's going to happen to my children like afterwards. You know,
Yeah, well, we all do, right? Like
yeah,
that's the sort of the parent condition is just worrying about them constantly.
yes. So they're going to teach him how to do all this good stuff, and they'll teach him how to wake up in the morning. They told me, they said, well, because I said I'll call him every morning to wake him up for school, and they're like, no, please don't do that because he's got to learn how to do that by himself.
Oh, so he's still going to be in high school while he's living in this apartment on his
Yep.
own.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
So I was a little concerned. They're going to teach him how to balance a checkbook. They're going to teach him how to balance money, as far as a budget
s-
and all
so
that
is
good
that
stuff.
is that how we get public schools to teach us to these things to kids? They have to be autistic first. That's crazy because
It
we
is.
never learned stuff like that in high school. They were just like, "Good luck.
Yeah, I know, right?
Here's algebra." I'm like, "All right." You know.
It's true. Actually, Naheem, he goes to, he's in what's called, they're mainstreaming him. So he's really in like normal classes, but
Okay.
he does have an emotional support classroom
Mm.
where if he can't handle being in school, like the classroom, like 45 minutes, he's able to get up and walk to the emotional support classroom for help.
Oh, that's good. So it's like part of his IEP then.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's like helpful for him because they'll tell him you can't handle um, if you can't handle like going to lunch for like 40 minutes or whatever they do, you can get up and you can go for a walk on the campus as long as your a teacher's with you. So he does have that freedom if he finds it too like he just can't do it.
Right. He just needs to like re-regulate and get himself centered. That's
Yeah,
good though.
exactly. Yeah, and he's taking well, like even Christian was in a class called he's in the life skills program,
Hmm.
which they do teach them how to, get they teach them how to cook, they teach them how to work.
That's good.
um yeah, so it's a really good program.
So I'm sure a lot of people right now listening are really wondering with your middle son and him having like the independent living situation. I'm sure everybody here is going, who pays for that? Is that paid for through the state, through a program?
Yeah, yeah, it's through the state pays for it.
Oh, okay. So that's pretty nice. So if they actually get into this situation where they have to live independently, then it's at least funded and you're not paying the rent for two places, literally.
Yeah, exactly. That's like, that's when he first went into the program, I was like, how much do I have to pay? And they're like, no, 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 it's covered through the insurance. They also have benefactors
Mm,
that give in money for the kids. Not that I can't buy my child clothing, but they do kick in money every year for like each kid to get them clothes, books, shoes, bathing suits, like in the summer.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Especially in today's economy, we're literally like, I'm struggling with 2,500 a month in rent. How do you want me to do five? Like,
No, it's true.
yeah, yeah, that's that. So it's really nice that they have these like programs available. Before we get into you though, your youngest, what's going on with them?
Well, that's the one that has Asperger's. He's very smart, very intelligent.
Oh, okay,
Um,
okay,
his social skills, like I said, they're not that great.
right.
Like even to this day. So, what I did was I just happened to put him in virtual cyber school, which is community charter school. And it's a
Hmm.
really good program. Um, the drawback though is he doesn't see children.
Right. Yeah, you can't really improve your social skills if you're not
Exactly.
in social environments.
Yeah, so what I do is I had told him, I said, okay, fine, you're going to do that. I said, but you have to join some kind of a club. So his therapist came up with the National Autism Society.
Hmm.
And they have different programs that they'll take the kids out into the community and let them socialize. Because I tried sending him to the science center and I put him in the robotics club because he's very into Legos and robotics and all that. And I sent him and he went, but he lasted one day
Yeah.
because it wasn't like what I thought. I thought they would really be sitting children together interacting, but they didn't.
Hmm. How old is this one?
He just turned 16.
Does he know how to play chess?
Yeah, actually, he does.
So maybe the chess team. I was on chess team growing up. Um, maybe that might be a decent idea for him because you have that direct one-on-one interaction with another kid, and it doesn't really require you to talk to them.
Yeah, I'll try it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, see, like I told him, I said, you want to get a job this summer. And he's like, yeah, I think I want to get a job. I said, well, what do you want to do? And he's like, something that doesn't require me to talk to people. And I said, no, he's a very, very shy kid. And he got
Mhm.
picked to go to Greece next summer to study.
Oh,
And
nice.
I can't send him. But
Oh,
I was like honored that they did, but I know he's not going to do well.
right. He'll have to come home pretty quick. I mean,
Exactly.
uh, job wise, data entry. It's work from home. You don't really have to talk too much. Usually, your boss call you once in a while, but you don't really have to
Yeah.
deal with people directly.
Yeah.
So maybe you could do something like that. That might be a good fit for him.
Yeah.
Okay. At this point, I really like to move into talking with you, about your experiences and your feelings and maybe some of the things you went through when raising, because you adopted them when they were babies. You've had them their whole lives.
Yep.
I'm sure from the beginning you were excited, and then when things kind of went south with some of the emotional stuff and then the violent
Mhm.
reactions, maybe you weren't ready. So kind of let's talk about that. Like, let's talk about like where you were mentally, where did you end up, and where you are now.
Well, it's really a lot of people because my children are, um, my older two is Afro American, and
Hmm.
the other one is Afro American. He's from Trinidad and Tobago. His brother is Panamanian and British. My other son is Guatemalan.
Mm.
So believe me, when we were in New York expressly, we had gotten looks like you couldn't imagine. And now taking them out for dinner, it, it was hard because
Yeah.
they don't have all those skills. And like people, they used to stare at me and look at me, and like I'm like, take a picture, it lasts longer. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
My favorite is in those situations where they're like, if
exactly.
you just smack them, it would fix them. It's like, it won't, but okay.
It's no, it's really true though. I got a lot of pushback from like some from my family. Like they're like, well, why would you adopt a special needs child? Because everybody needs a home. That's why. Um, Emotionally, it was very hard, especially when I had to put my son in the hospital.
Hmm.
You feel guilty, and I was like, I was devastated. I really have to tell you. You know, Going out is much different from when you go out with your family.
Yeah.
Because like everybody stares, and I think that's really wrong. Seriously, because no child is perfect.
Right.
You,
Right.
you know.
At least neurotypical children have some form of control. It's not like they're, you know, having, literally an autistic breakdown where they have no control of the situation. So it's like, these kids have autism. Like, why are you staring at them like that? Like, let them alone. They're just trying, you know?
Yeah, I know, and it really sucks because I feel bad for parents that get criticism.
Hmm.
Like, don't criticize us, applaud us. Like we're doing something out there.
Yeah, we're fighting the good fight right now. You know,
Exactly.
I don't. I'm very fortunate with my son where I don't deal with violent outbursts, and um, meltdowns aren't a real common thing with him. So I'm
That's
actually
good.
very, very fortunate. But there are a lot of times where I feel horrifically guilty, about some of the ways I've handled situations as a parent, or maybe some of the ways I felt at times where I've just been overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And so I can't imagine what it would be like to sit there and go, well, I have to put my son in the hospital. That's making the
Yeah.
especially like you didn't accidentally have kids or anything. I'm not saying everybody has kids by accident, but like you've made a very direct choice to have these children, like you wanted them, and
Yeah.
then you have to sort of like hand them over to somebody. That's got to be rough.
Yeah. It's like I think it was hard because I felt like a failure. Like, why can't I do this? Why can't I help this child? That's what I felt like.
Yeah.
And um they really, I mean, like in New York, I did belong to what's called the caring table, which I'm trying to open up right now again. It's for parents to just come and relax and talk about what's going on, because a lot of people have a lot of things in common that they don't know. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? It's helpful. It's like an outlet for you. And my husband used to come to everything. In fact, my husband is like my rock right now because he just helps me, and he tells me it's going to be all right. Like I realize now that, especially my older one that is really not, he's hard. That I didn't realize that a parent has to literally get custody of them to make power of attorney rights.
Right.
So I have to go to an attorney actually this week and obtain my rights to help him, even though it's an official adoption, which it is. But it's just the fact that, you know, you got to be able to make decisions for them legally.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that hurt the worst is, like I said, I came from New York, and living down here, I really thought I would be making a lot of friends and, nice people. And unfortunately, when my kids do get out of control, I sometimes have to call for help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they look at me like terrible.
Oh yeah, you definitely came to the wrong state if that's what you were looking for. Yeah, no,
They look
I
at
deal with
you,
it too. Yeah.
and it's wrong. It's 100% wrong. Because, like, I had this one person that say, "Oh, well, we like to handle it as a family." Well, so am I handling it as a family. I'm just trying to keep everybody safe.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly.
Hmm.
When you were adopting them, like, were you like informed of some of the things that could happen, like with the potential for, violent outbursts, and then the possibility that you would have to put them in the hospital or into a group home at some point? Like, did you know all of that was a possibility when you were adopting, or was this like shocking news to
Yeah,
you
it
when it
was
happened?
a surprise. But however, my older one and my middle one, their mom was a very big, unfortunately, drug user.
Mm,
So that did affect it to a
right.
total.
Right.
That did affect it, So I was like, okay, but we're going to deal with this because I really wanted a baby, and we just dealt with it as it came along. We had really good doctors.
Okay.
They're all in therapy. I think my kids went into therapy when they were like 5. Not on medication, but they went on they did it at age 5. They started with the therapies. And you know what? When your kid goes on medication, you have a lot of you could have positive effects or negative effects, because most of the drugs out there are made for adults.
Right.
So
Right.
that's where it becomes a little sticky.
A little dicey on that one. Yeah.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
so when these things started like happening, and you were first experiencing the violent outbursts, and trying to get the ABA and all of this, were you did you experience anything like depression, anxiety? Did you
Oh
go through
yeah,
that?
yeah. I was actually afraid of my child because
Okay.
most of the violence occurred to me and my husband.
Mm.
Like, I had walked out of open heart surgery and my son had a meltdown, and he literally hit me in the middle of my chest.
Oh gee.
And yeah, it was pretty bad. Um, and I remember going to a session, to go see him in the hospital, and he was abusing me like you can imagine, like verbally, right?
Right.
And there was the security guard was there, and he said, "Listen, just leave because to you don't need to put up with this." And I said, "No, I'm not leaving." Because, and I told my son straight. I told all my sons straight. The more you push me the way, the harder I'm going to push to get towards you, because I really believe in you.
That's just a testament to how much you love your kids. Um, and that's really, really commendable too. A lot of parents in those situations might even give up. They might give in to their
Hmm.
own emotional states. Um, are you still processing that to this day, or did you
Well,
end
yeah,
up?
because yes, I am, because I have to look at the what ifs. I do worry about them when they grow up. Like I said, Chris is 18 with a mentality of 7. And I do worry, like, how is he going to get through life like this? Like, I do sit down with him every chance I get, and I go over mathematics with him, and I'll go over like readings. And it was funny because they told me, even on my other son, his brother, they read Shakespeare. They
Hmm.
actually read Shakespeare. And it amazes me because I went to school and I went to college and I couldn't even read Shakespeare. It's like I think today's society, when they see a handicapped child, they have this perception that they're dumb, and they're
Right.
really not. There are so many different aspects of handicapped. Like, let's say, like I knew a kid. I had a kid on my bus that was Down syndrome that knew the 15 times table.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's like I had a disagreement with a professor who said, "Well, children with autism and Down syndrome, they're not smart." And I had brought up there was an old show called Life Goes On, and it
I
was
think I
about
remember that.
centered. Yeah, you remember that, right? It was centered about a child that had Down syndrome, and I said, "Well, what about that kid?" And he's like, "Oh, well, that's Hollywood for you." And I'm like, "No, it's not. These kids, even though they still have feelings, they still have emotions. Um, People have to give them a break and treat them like they're normal." And it's like I always believe, like they have told me, when a child has autism, instead of them coming into your world, you have to go into their world.
Yeah. Yeah, that is fair. That is very true.
Yeah, bring it down to like their level.
For somebody who's gone through all these various stages, especially with having three kids on the spectrum, you sound very well adjusted. And I'm just wondering, like, did you have any like techniques, or did you seek out therapy or anything like that when it came to dealing with your own emotional states when dealing with these kids?
Well, like I told you, the caring table actually helped because it was a bunch of parents that had children like mine. So you bounced ideas off of each other. And like I just met a remarkable woman up here that her child is in my son's class. And we just had this like instant connection because we know what we go through. The staring, the talk behind your back, looking at the children and making comments. You know, as a parent, it really does hurt.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think, I honestly, truthfully think that these kids should be looked at as gifts. They're not special. All right. They're not special ed. They're like more like they're angels from God that are just a little bit different. But they all deserve the same respect as you would any child.
Yeah, and let that be, a statement here. You're actually the second person to say that almost verbatim on this show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like it really is though. It's really true, and I kind of feel like when these kids come into our lives, it's just because like in some sort of universal way we've been chosen, right? Because not
Yep.
everybody's cut out to deal with that. Not everybody is emotionally, mentally, physically ready to deal with some of the struggles and challenges that come with dealing with these kids. And and it is sometimes like when you have this emotional roller coaster of feeling like
Mhm.
you know maybe they're not hitting certain milestones that you were really looking forward to, like me, like my son turned 3. I wanted to take him fishing so bad, and I didn't get to do that until this year. So
Mhm.
like the sort of the depression that comes from feeling that, and then at times feeling like you're failing as a parent, and then like you said, the
Yep.
people in public stare, they point, and they make comments, and they say things directly to you. I've even had people waiting in queues being like, if you don't make him act right, I'll make him act right. And
Are
it's
you
like,
serious?
oh yeah, yeah.
Oh
It's
my
like
God.
it's like, well, I mean, you could try, and I could show you how I dealt with things when I was 20. Um,
Yeah.
and like it almost makes you want to react violently at that point. 'Cause you're like, instantly trying to protect your children,
Oh, yeah.
you
That's
know.
me. That's definitely
Mhm.
me. Like
Yeah,
my middle
absolutely.
son will tell you, my mom will fight anybody for me. And it's God's honest truth. I once took them to Chuck E. Cheese in New York and my son bit me. And I did react, I'm not gonna lie. And I was like, how you cannot do that. I mean, like really, I snapped.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this lady with 9 children in back of me because she was Hasidic. And she went up to me and she's like, how dare you reprimand your child? And I was like, lady, mind your business. You have no right to tell me what to do with my child.
Right, right. Like,
Like I wasn't abusing him. I just smacked him on the butt. You just bit me. I just like reacted. She's like, well,
yeah.
how do you know I'm not from ACS? I said, I don't care if you're from ACS. I
Hey,
said, if
that
you were
doesn't
from
matter.
ACS, then you would know your job.
Besides, they won't stop you. Like, if you're a parent
Exactly.
who utilizes spankings as a form of discipline, provided you're not bruising the child or overdoing it, they're not going to
Yeah.
do anything. They literally go, that's discipline. That's fine. We may not
Yeah.
agree with it. Like, not everybody's gonna be like, oh yeah, that's how I would handle a situation, but it's not illegal, you know. And a lot of people, they just like judging parents. It's like,
Yes.
you haven't walked, you couldn't walk 10 feet in my shoes, let alone a mile. So
That is so true.
yeah, yeah, because the first time they have these kids in the house and everything's peace and quiet, and the wrong color shows up on the television, and suddenly a heavy toy goes flying across the room and puts a
Yep.
hole in the wall. They're not like, well, what's going on here? And then for the rest of us, we just look up and we're like, I'll spackle that later, and like go back to sipping on our
Exactly.
coffee a little bit, like you know.
Exactly. That is like so true. And I really think that parents, just getting into this, they need a break. And
Yeah.
that's one thing I can honestly say. Give yourself a break. Take the time out to take care of yourself and do self care.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to do that. I am in therapy because of everything I've went through, and it does help because everybody needs a sounding board. That is why the caring table that I'm putting together is so special because it gives parents it's they can cry, they can. We used to do. I'm going to be doing arts and crafts vision boards, where you see yourself in the future,
Hmm.
and yeah. And what we used to do is also get the whole family involved. Take them out to the park. Let them run around and have some fun. Because every
Yeah.
single child deserves to have some fun.
Yeah.
Like, I remember being in the restaurant and, my kids were like, I think they were like 3 and 2. And, kids make a mess, okay? A normal child can make a mess. And there was a big mess underneath the table. I have to admit it. And this lady at the next booth was like, I knew she was making comments. And then I heard her say something like, oh my God, she's letting them use utensils. And I was like, what are the animals? So as I was getting up and I passed her, I said, you know what? I said, it's Easter Saturday. So I'm going to pray for your soul that you get a conscience.
Yeah. Oh my god, she's letting them use utensils. I would have turned around and been like, "Do you know how hard it was for me to teach them how to use these
Yeah,
utensils?" Yes, they're using them because it took me 8 years to get me to use them. Like
exactly. And it's true. And it's like, you know, I cannot stand because it makes a parent feel bad.
right, right. And they make these comments, and sometimes like I'm not even 100% sold that these people are genuinely like mean-spirited people. I'd like to chalk it up to like them just being really ignorant, right? Cuz like especially like your specific situation there, their kids were probably using forks and stuff since they were a year and a half old, where, maybe your kids like to this day, like my kid's going to be 7, and very rarely can I get him to use a fork. Like he like understands the operation, but he's just not
Mhm.
dexterous enough for it quite yet. And, the day comes where he consistently uses utensils, I'm going to be jumping for joy,
Yep.
because I don't have to bathe him after every meal, and like I feel like these people, they don't really understand what a triumph it is that something as simple as using a fork and knife or a fork and spoon at the table is for these kids. And then they make
Yeah.
these comments,
Hmm.
and then it makes you feel bad. And it's really hard. It's really hard to look at those people objectively and not get angry with them.
I think what helped me the most is I I treated my kids like normal children. Like my sons, believe it or not, they're boys. I did put them in dancing school. It did help them, believe it or not, because it teaches them coordination.
Mm-hmm.
It teaches them respect for the teacher. They need to learn how to listen. They need to learn how to get up on stage and perform, which is like kind of little, kind of scary.
Right.
But
For
my
most
children,
people.
yes, even a normal child would be scared. But to get these children up there, and I think it's a great thing that the one thing I did tell the dancing school teacher when I first started was my children have special needs, and then she's like, "That's okay." She's like, "It's all right." She goes, "We have plenty of special needs children," and so I basically put my children into anything, and that really did help. First, you feel proud as a parent when they're up there and they're doing such a great job. And for all the parents out there, I applaud you because I know what you're going through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hey, dance actually sounds like a really good, option, especially if you have a teacher who's willing to work with special needs because like you said,
Yeah.
they learn all that instruction and stuff, but on top of that, dance is hard. Dance is
Hmm.
exercise, and they're really I find with my son that like if I can put him into a situation where he can really just burn some of that energy, for like an hour or so, I have such an easier time with him at home because he's
Hmm.
got that extra out of him, and now he's able to focus a little bit better because he's not so jittery and needing to run.
Hmm.
So maybe that would be like a good thing. I wonder if there's anybody out there who's like, I'm a dance instructor and I'm going to specialize in special needs kids because I have a feeling they could clean up if they did that.
Yeah, I agree totally. Because it's, when my two boys, Christian and his brother, had to do a particular dance number and they had to throw around beach balls. And I got to tell you, I was a little nervous, but like my middle child was a little bit better at the dancing than Christian was. And they just told him, help him out as much as you can.
Hmm.
And that's what he did. He helped his brother focus and do all the right moves.
That's
And did I
awesome.
get comments afterwards? I mean, I got a lot of good comments, but they're like, "Well, your other child knows a lot better." I'm like, "No," I said, "He's just different."
Yeah, they're just at different levels,
Yeah.
like the diversity between these kids. You can have a 13-year-old who is socially on a 3-year-old's level,
Hmm.
but can plow through an encyclopedia in an afternoon,
Oh yeah.
and then you can have those young kids that, you know, socially, man, they're doing great, but intellectually, not so much,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
it's such this wide range of just their different individual capabilities and abilities
Yep.
that, it's so hard to put any of them just in a box.
Hmm. It's funny because I came up with this toy that I wanted to put out there, right? And what it was called Angry Balls. And I went to my son's psychologist, right? And I
Yeah.
told him, I said, what I could, because my kids, when they get upset, they like to throw things, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So I said, I'm going to come up with styrofoam balls, right? Or like Nerf balls, put them in a box and tell my child, when you do get upset, this is what you're allowed to throw. So they would maybe like calm down or something, right? And I
Oh,
got a
yeah.
lot of pushback saying it wouldn't be a good idea because it's not teaching them the right formality. I'm like, but if it could help my kid to get some of that anger out, because believe it or not, autism children do have a lot of anger because
Mhm.
I think they realize that they're different from everybody else.
Well, yeah, they know they're different. They can't communicate as well. They can't emotionally manage as well. It's gotta be one of the most frustrating lives on the entire planet. I'd be ticked off all the time too?
Yeah, because especially when these kids see that people are staring at them, like, what are you looking at? You know,
Yeah, I mean,
and
this Angry Balls idea sounds great in my opinion, because
I'm
like,
I'm trying to
you
do it.
can try to redirect a kid, you know, and tell them you're not allowed to do this when you're mad, but you can do this. But like that's the only thing that gives them their release. They're not a neurotypical kid where they can manage and find different there. Like if that's what works, that's just what works. And then like giving them a healthy way of doing a thing that would typically be misbehavior, but like you can do that here. I mean, that sounds like a great idea. Let them get it out, you know?
Exactly. I remember my son having a therapist. It's called waiver. In other words, where they would take when he was older, he took them out. He would take him out, and he would take him to these places. And I remember him. He was a little afraid of him. So he was downstairs, and he gave my son a pillow, and he's
Mhm.
like, "You could rip it apart. This is what you want to do." And at first, I was like, "I don't think that's such a great idea." Because this kid was ripping the nose off, the arms off, the legs off, and I'm like, "What are you teaching him?" No, I was very serious, and I even said it. I said, "What are you teaching a child?" Because they're not going to understand the difference between a pillow and a regular person.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, but
Oh,
like we're a special breed of people trying to deal with these children, and a lot of people call me an angel for taking on these children, and I usually tell them I need them just as much as they need me,
oh yeah.
and that's true with a biological parent.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I remember having this parent come up to me and said, "Thank you so much for holding his hand," because most people wouldn't, because he's autistic. And I'm like, "I'm
Yeah.
not afraid." And she even told me, she's like, "I sometimes feel responsible for this." And I'm like, you cannot, don't blame yourself for having a child that's special needs, because it's not your fault.
Yeah. Yeah, and then just like you said, like biological and it doesn't matter. It's like that saying, the blood of the covenant is stronger than the water of the womb, right?
Yeah,
So that blood doesn't matter. And if you're caring for these kids and you love them, you're their mom, you know?
thank you. Thank you
So
so much.
yeah, no problem. So we are coming up on time, and I know that you're trying to start up things like that caring table you were talking about, and
Yes.
I'd really like to give you an opportunity here to kind of promote some of these things and like maybe give people a way to reach out to you if they're interested in helping you get this sort of thing off the ground.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so it's called the caring table. We're going to meet twice a month, either at my house, which I do live in the Lehigh Valley area, or we're going to or we'll meet someplace else. And what we'll do is we'll sit down, we'll talk, and you get to vent all your problems, right? We'll do some arts and crafts, which, believe it or not, does help. We will do breakfast, um, and it's a good way to make friends. And also, what I am doing is I sell jewelry and T-shirts, and what I'm thinking about doing is I'm going to be like near the Christmas holiday. I'm going to be starting up a fundraiser for like 40% of my profits will go directly to autism research. And if you need to get in touch with me, my email is Joanne 30252 at gmail.com. And I would love to talk to you.
Awesome. Hey, anybody out there who, could really use that sort of like group environment and the ability to talk face to face, I would definitely recommend reaching out to Joanne. As you heard throughout the episode here, she really has a firm grasp of, what's going on and what a lot of you are going through, and maybe even has some special insight being an adoptive mother
Mhm.
to these kids. So, hey, go ahead and reach out. Joanne, thank you so much for sitting down with me
Thank
today.
you.
This has
And
been it's been so much fun.
I give you a lot of credit,
Oh, I appreciate that.
because, no, really, I really do. As a father, I give you a lot of credit, because you're like, he's your baby,
Oh yeah.
and you sound like a great parent.
I appreciate that a lot. I didn't have a good dad growing up, so I wanted to be to my son what my dad never was to me. So,
Oh,
yeah. Um But yeah, again, like, this has been a blast. It's been really lighthearted, and that's really what I'm aiming to do with this show. And I think that people are really going to start to get a taste of, what it's, there are other parents out here who are doing the same thing. There are people out here who understand, who get it. And there's going to definitely be ways for you to communicate with each other and really,
Mhm.
find your kindred spirits out here who understand the things you're going through. And again, Joanne, thanks so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Brighter Spectrum podcast. If you have any comments, questions, or stories to share, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, feel free to reach out to me at brighterspectrumpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and keep shining a light on the journey of parenting.
Thank you for listening.